go to Beto O'Rourke. Beto, thank you so much for being here. Beto O'Rourke, we all know him as the man who should have beaten Ted Cruz, one of the worst candidates for the United States Senate, somebody who, weirdly enough, it seems that no one in Texas likes, but they keep voting for. But he came very, very close to beating him, very, very close. And right now he's been doing something new. He's been back out on the road, and he's been holding more than a dozen town halls across Texas, nearly all of them in red Republican districts, getting the news from the people, finding out what people are thinking. Beto O'Rourke, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. I'm grateful to you.
Of course, of course, of course. So talk to me about this. You've been traveling, and this is what you did actually during your campaign. I remember I covered that campaign a bit, and this is your style. Why did you decide to go back out on the road? Are you running for something, or what's the reason for the tour?
You know, people are hurting right now, and people want to fight back. And in order to do that, you've got to bring people together. So when we go to Amarillo or Wichita Falls or Tyler, Texas, we say, this is open to everyone, Republicans, Democrats, independents alike. I'll speak for just a little bit to open up the meeting, and then I want to hear what's going on with you. And what I'm learning as I listen is it really doesn't matter where we are, but people know that we're not okay as a country. And I never ask party affiliation, but folks will stand up and say, look, I'm a veteran. I served in Vietnam. I don't know how cutting 83,000 jobs at the VA is going to make it easier for me to get my service-connected disability or to see a behavioral specialist for my PTSD. Folks who are concerned about due process, and not necessarily just in the liberal bastions, but people who understand the Constitution and that it's not okay for plainclothes masked agents without badges or warrants to sweep people up off the street and deny them the ability to defend themselves and illegally detain them and imprison them and deport them to a country from which they'll never come back, a country that they've never been to in the first place. And Joy, I know that you'll get this, but perhaps the most consistent thing I hear is people want the Democratic Party to fight back, and they really want them to fight, not to roll over, not to submit, not to bend the knee, not to wait till polling numbers change. They want them to fight right now in 2025 and not wait till 2026 or, God forbid, 2028. So that's what I'm getting no matter where I go across Texas or really across the country.
Break down some of these issues, because I will note that Gallup has shown Donald Trump's numbers deeply underwater. He's even underwater on immigration, which was his signature issue that he ran on. Let's zero in on that. Texas is already a state that is majority non-white. You wouldn't know it from the way that it is governed. The non-white vote is deeply suppressed in Texas, which was a challenge that you and every other Democrat has had running. But it's a state where you haven't seen as many of the headlines about people being kidnapped off the streets. You're not seeing that as much because they're focusing on doing that in blue states. Are you seeing that happen in Texas? And how are Texans reacting to it?
It is happening in Texas, perhaps not in as dramatic fashion as it's happening in California or Massachusetts or other places. But yes, you have ICE agents who routinely arrest, detain, ultimately end up deporting people who are here legally, who are paroled legally into this country, and who are going to a regularly scheduled either court hearing or going to renew their green card or other legal papers that allow them to have status in this country, and sweeping them up off the streets, terrorizing them and their families, and by extension, terrorizing the communities in which they live, whether they're immigrant or mixed immigrant status, or just people who care about their neighbors and their friends and their family members. But you brought up Texas. It's also central to how the president's trying to answer the question that you just posed, which is on what was arguably his most popular issue, immigration. He's polling at 35% right now. How in the world could he hope to hold on to that slim majority in the U.S. Congress and the House of Representatives? And he has asked Governor Greg Abbott in Texas and the Republican majority legislature to convene, and they just convened today, to redraw 5 congressional boundaries currently represented, importantly, by African-American or Mexican-American members of Congress, and redraw them so that Republicans can win those seats. And it's the only way he has any hope of holding on to that majority is to rig this system mid-decade, nearly unprecedented. And we have a few levers at our disposal to pull and to fight back, but it just shows you the depth of his unpopularity and what he feels like he needs to do in order to hold on to his purchase on power.
think about Texas, and it is home to some of the most frightening headlines outside of immigration that we've seen. The measles epidemic started in Texas. It's the most egregious in Texas. You have a massive shortage of doctors and nurses in Texas. Doctors are leaving the state because the abortion ban makes it hard for them to practice or dangerous for them to practice, or afraid to touch any woman who might be pregnant because they're afraid that, if anything happens and she has a miscarriage, they'll go to prison. And so you're seeing, doctors leave. You're seeing teachers leaving Texas. Texas has a teacher shortage. And then, of course, you just had this incredible tragedy, this 100-year flood. And then we find out that Texas turned down $10 million in that county where that flood took the lives of so many people, more than 100 people. They didn't want the money because it came from Joe Biden. So they allowed their community to be victimized and vulnerable to a flood that they could have at least given a warning to the people living there.
And in
Why do
addition,
Texans tolerate? Go ahead, please.
sorry about that, Joy, but in addition, one of the positions eliminated at the National Weather Service was a liaison in the Austin, San Antonio office who was responsible for communicating emergencies like the one that we just saw on the 4th of July in the Hill Country to local emergency responders and officials and others who could carry the message to their communities. We don't know everything that happened in that tragedy yet, and I think we should, hold judgment until we do, but you have to assume that that did not help, and it is not what we need. And everything that you just described is deeply unpopular. I mean, folks want teachers in their local schools. People want to be able to get health care, and they can't if doctors are leaving the state and if we're the least insured in the nation. In 2021, when it got cold in the energy capital of the world, they couldn't keep the lights on or the heat running. 700 people lost their lives, many of them literally freezing to death in the state of Texas. But when post Shelby versus Holder, you make this the toughest state in the nation in which to register to vote or to cast a ballot, it helps to explain the otherwise inexplicable, because it's not as though Texans don't care. They're certainly not lazy. They love this democracy, or what is left of this democracy, as much as anyone. It's just that they've literally been drawn out in many cases of the ability to vote. And this redistricting, which is just, shorthand for members of Congress choosing their own voters, that's going to make this even worse unless we stop it. And so my hope is, and I hear this from everyone everywhere, the Democrats fight back with everything they have. Fight fire with fire. So if that means the Texas State House Democrats need to leave the state to deny their Republican colleagues a quorum, so be it. Let's do it, and let's have their backs. If Governor Gavin Newsom wants to follow through on his threat to redistrict in California to give Democrats more advantage there, I know no one likes this, but we've got to win power until we can change it. And if we don't do everything we can, we'll not get that power. And then the third thing is, if they do succeed in redrawing these districts, Democrats have to be ready to compete in and win them, not just the 5 newly created districts, if that's what they end up doing, but Republican districts that before were considered to be safe, that will have to lose some Republican voters to these newly gerrymandered districts. There might be, 10, 11, 12 districts in play in Texas. And who knows in a midterm for the president whose party is in power, what might happen with the wind at our back, with him driving this economy and our nation with it into the ditch. So I just want to make sure that we fight with everything we have on every single front.
Everybody likes it. I like it. I actually am in favor of this. I think Democrats have been, Democrats in New York, in a sense, lost the House by redistricting, quote unquote, fairly. Democrats are always trying to play nice. No, I think that California should redistrict so that there are no Republicans in Congress, if that's what it takes, because it's clear that the Republican Party is not, my father liked the Republicans. He was a Reaganite. They ain't that Republican Party. This is an extremist party that is allowing fascism to take it over. So yeah, I think Democrats should do whatever it takes. Let's talk specifically about some of the things that do sound like they are moving in the right direction in Texas. James Talarico he's been doing a lot of talking in a way that people are looking and going, you know what, there are Texas Democrats, and I would say you would be another one, who do know how to talk to regular people and who know how to talk without sounding like pointy-headed elites. Is Texas finally getting its bearings in terms of finding communicators? Jasmine Crockett is a brilliant communicator out of Texas. So is that the key, that Texas is finally finding its voice, or Democrats are?
Two great examples. The first, James Talarico, young state representative who's also a student in seminary, who can speak and just as importantly, listen to people everywhere on any issue and connect the dots for folks. Why did Governor Abbott want to defund local schools, to send vouchers to families who are already taking their kids to private schools? Well, there's this challenge with Christian nationalism in Texas, where billionaires are literally footing the bill for these campaigns to upend, destabilize, and ultimately destroy local schools. To have a preacher like James Talarico connect those dots for us is really powerful. And you're right, Joy, he does it in language that everyone gets, and he does it everywhere. I mean, he'll talk to you, he'll talk to Joe Rogan, he'll talk to folks in a big blue urban area, he'll go to a remote rural red county, and he'll do the same thing. I think he's one of the most exciting people on the scene anywhere right now. Jasmine Crockett, I mean, no one can pack more into a sentence than she can. And she can do it on the fly, on her feet, in the middle of a committee hearing, when she's under intense pressure from the chairman and the other extremist MAGAs in the room. She can do it in front of a microphone. She can really do it anywhere. And those two, no matter where I go in Texas or the country, are two of the folks that I get asked about the most in the state of Texas. And then you've got Joaquin Castro and Colin Allred and so many other talented people there. We don't lack for talent in Texas, but it is a real challenge in a state that is so suppressed, so intimidated when it comes to voters, and is about to double down with this mid-decade gerrymander. That's why it's so important. And the big case that I want to make is it's important not just to the state of Texas, but it will determine the balance of power in the United States Congress. If President Trump pursues a third term, which I believe he will try to do, just look what he did at the end of his first term, then having a check on him in the House of Representatives is literally existential for this country. And that comes down to Texas.
Yeah. Oh, no, he will. I don't think Donald Trump ever intends to leave office. The one place you cannot gerrymander a state is in a statewide election, whether it's a Senate election or a governor's election. And you've got a Senate election coming up. Ken Paxton, who is your attorney general, who's got all kinds of problems, crimey problems, marital problems, which seems to be getting a lot of attention. He's getting a divorce for some very unpleasant reasons. Does that mean that is Texas like Florida and I say that as somebody who used to live in Florida, the worst people win in Florida, even though everyone hates them. I don't think anybody likes any of the two United States senators in Florida. They just vote for them anyway because they're Republican. Can Ken Paxton still win, even though it does not appear that he's very well liked? Is that how bad Texas is?
Yeah, I mean, look at Ted Cruz in 2018. I mean, we came so close to beating him in down ballot. I mean, James Talarico won his seat in that election. Colin Allred won his seat in that election. We saw an incredible transformation in Texas, but at the top of the ticket, very often, not only is it partisan muscle memory, but these folks who ironically and perversely get to run as outsiders, which is Ken Paxton, he'll say, look, yes, I was indicted twice. I was under active FBI investigation. I was impeached by the state legislature, by a majority of my own party. But like Trump, what I believe he'll do is he'll say, that's the deep state. These are the systems that have failed you. They're coming after you, but they got to come through me first. So we have to have an inspiring, motivational candidate at the top who can excite the people of Texas, regardless of where they live, and in some cases, what party they used to vote with or for. But that candidate needs to be joined by an all-star team of folks at the gubernatorial seat, at the attorney general, at lieutenant governor, and then just as importantly, down ballot, every state house seat needs to be contested, every congressional race. If we do that, if we put that full team out there on the court, I really do think we have an honest shot at winning in Texas in 2026. And who knows how much worse Donald Trump is going to take this country, and who knows if that will come off on either Ken Paxton, who's likely to be the nominee, or John Cornyn, who no one really loves out of either party. So yeah, there may be a chance for Democrats, and I want to make sure that we're ready for it. And so we're out there doing the voter registration, voter organizing, and staying in touch with these newly registered voters so that they can navigate this incredibly challenging system in Texas.
I have two more questions for you. The second to last question. One of the big challenges in Texas is that you have this massive Latino vote that never kicks in. Latino voters turn out in relatively low numbers, compared to their numbers in Texas, which are large. Have you started to unpack like how you change that, get people to vote? I mean, if getting people who look like you kidnapped off the streets of America based on the color of their skin won't do it, I don't know what else will. But do you think that's enough?
You're absolutely right. I mean, El Paso, Hidalgo County, Cameron County, Zapata County, they literally had a front row seat to the cruelty of the Trump administration in his first term. Family separation, kids in cages, all of that stuff. Trump's vote share increased in some of these counties dramatically in 2020 and in 2024. I think part of it is that Democrats really didn't offer a compelling aspirational vision for the future of these communities. What's it going to mean to have a job that you work that doesn't require a second or third job to make ends meet? What if you could see a doctor in the least insured state in the country? What if you could afford to buy a home? I mean, basic things that Democrats have not been talking about. And really, to their credit, Republicans have, along with a lot of other obnoxious, horrible, racist stuff. But they had that much, right? And then the other big fault that Democrats have to understand, come to terms with, and never repeat again is they took so many of these voters for granted. The thinking was never said out loud, but if you're black or if you're brown, you're likely going to vote for a Democrat. We don't have to worry about your vote. It's already in the bank. We're going to go chase that suburban soccer mom in Collin or Denton County. She's important, but so are all these people who have literally been the bedrock of our party and have powered our success, not for election cycle after election cycle, but literally for generations so far. And if we don't show up and include them in the conversation, include their dreams in the campaigns that we're running, then we're going to get a result like we saw in 24. So we cannot afford to make that mistake again. And I sure hope that our party has learned that.
And let me ask you about abortion, because Texas has been a leading indicator of where Republicans want to go nationwide in terms of abortion bans, really vicious abortion bans, including a snitch law, you name it. Has that changed the way, in your experience, when you're out on the road and talking, particularly with women, particularly with white women, has this changed the way they think about politics at all? And then
It has. Greg Abbott, our governor, when he was signing that abortion ban into law, a reporter said, Mr. Governor, there's no exception for rape or incest or the life of the mother. How are you going to handle that? And he said, we're going to eliminate rape in the state of Texas. They studied this following the passage of this bill and the total abortion ban in Texas. And in the 19 months following that, more than 26,000 women and girls in Texas were forced to carry the child of their rapist because of this law that he signed. So that has got people's attention. In addition, we sit at the epicenter of a maternal mortality crisis that has gotten much worse. Translation, women are dying in the state of Texas. Here's the good news. You mentioned some of this crazy stuff in Lubbock. They passed a bill that does not allow you to drive on their streets if you're pregnant and you seek to drive into another state like New Mexico, where abortion is safe and legal. That really happened. They tried to do it up north in Amarillo, which is even redder and more conservative. But what's wonderful is that everyday Texans, many of them women, many of them the white women that you just asked about, stood up to be counted at this moment of truth and stopped the city council in Amarillo from passing a similar ordinance. Now, that's just one small example, but it gives me some hope that people are paying attention and they're ready to take action when the call comes. And so let's hope that comes through in 2026, but let's not wait until then. Let's get out there, organize, register, and fight right now.
My last question to you is, this is something that's going to be familiar because we've talked about this before on my previous shows, my previous iteration, the issue of guns. You were very forthright in trying to challenge that orthodoxy, that it's firearms first, guns before people, guns before children. And Texas is really at the vanguard of this obsession with having as many guns as they want, as many guns anytime, anywhere. Has that softened at all, or are people still reflexively voting no matter what else is happening? Measles killing their kid, floods, drowning their kid, no matter what. Are Texans still primarily gun voters?
You know what? There's a surprising amount of common ground on raising the age to purchase an assault weapon, on having a red flag law, on having a universal background check, which we still don't have in Texas. And a majority of Republicans support those ideas. A majority of Democrats, independents as well. There's just not the political will or leadership in the state house or in the governor's mansion to do that. But, on this larger issue of whether, you know, an 18-year-old should be able to buy an AR-15 or 2 or 3 if they want, hundreds or thousands of rounds of ammunition. When I say that we should ban that, you know, folks say that's crazy. And I think we need more people than asking the next question, is that crazy? Or is it crazy that we lead the nation in school shootings, that more than 3 years after Uvalde, nothing's been done to make it any less likely that any child meets the same fate as those 19 kids did on that day in May of 2022. When we talk to people about the common sense of this issue, I think we're going to win more people over. But I think I'm in a very small minority of Democrats who are willing to talk about this publicly and forthrightly and to connect it to the deaths that are devastating communities across the state of Texas right now. We can figure this out. It's not, this wasn't God who did it to us. It's not a natural disaster. This is a man-made problem that can be solved by the human beings of Texas and of the United States of America. So I still have hope. I still work on this. I do think most people are there in the common sense center on this issue, but we just got to make sure that we're connecting with them, listening to them, and then fighting right alongside them to win these elections.
Beto O'Rourke, it's always a pleasure. Thank you so much. Tell everybody real quick, where can they find you?
I'm at poweredxpeople.org. We would love to have you if you want to volunteer with us, help us reach those Texas voters, turn them out, and win elections.
Beto O'Rourke, thank you very much. Appreciate you.
Thank you.
Keep doing it.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank y'all for tuning in. Be sure to like and subscribe. Share this this channel. Make sure that everybody subscribes to the YouTube channel. 70% of people are lurking, watching these shows and not subscribing. Why would you do that? So make sure that you like, subscribe, and throw some comments in. Thank you all for joining the Joy Reid Show. See you on the next one, and goodbye for now.